when Iran wanted to attack the GCC, it disproportionately attacked UAE, a fact that is imprinted in the DNA of how we see Iran as a threat. This is a generational, civilizational change.
Israel should look at the partnership with GCC countries, a strategic partnership, that we should share our experience in many areas and subjects, like home defense, but not only defense.
The path forward runs through the Emirati model, which is integration, not confrontation. That argument won the war of ideas in the region.
Iran's retaliation in this war against the Gulf Arab states has disproportionately targeted the United Arab Emirates, the UAE. Of all the Arab countries that Israel has peace with, the UAE has remained particularly close, if at times publicly quiet. With the landmark 2020 Abraham Accords, economic relations soared. And even during the Gaza war, as U.S. airlines stopped flying to Israel, the UAE's Fly Dubai flew to Tel Aviv multiple times per day. Iranian retaliation against U.S. allies in the Middle East has thrust the Gulf states into unfamiliar territory, being on the front lines of a serious conflict. What does the Iran war mean for relations between Israel and the United Arab Emirates? I'm David McGuffin of the Washington Institute. I'm happy to go on this journey with you. The Iranian retaliation has prompted the Emirates to reconsider its regional strategy. Top leaders advocate for deeper coordination with both Israel and the U.S. and firmer opposition towards Iran. To take a deep dive into what this all means for the future of Israel-UAE relations and other Gulf states, I'm happy to be joined by two top experts. We have Amir Hayek. He was the first Israeli ambassador to the United Arab Emirates from 2021 to 2024. His work strengthened diplomatic and economic ties between the two countries. And Nadim Koteich. He is a Lebanese Emirati columnist for Asharq al-Awsat. He was general manager of Sky News Arabia. It's a delight to have two people who follow developments so closely in the Gulf and in Israel, both Ambassador Amir Hayek and Nadim Koteich, to be with us today to discuss this important topic. Nadim, why don't I start with you? I mean, there seems to be a clear shift underway in the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, towards Iran. The conventional wisdom of the Gulf until this war was straddle the fence between the U.S. and Israel on one side without taking a firm approach towards Iran on the other. But this strategy did not shield the Gulf from being attacked directly by Iran. So how do you imagine this conflict shifting UAE attitudes and Gulf attitudes towards Iran?
Thank you, David, and hi to Amir. Let me start by challenging the premise slightly. The UAE never really straddled a fence on Iran. Whatever appeared like straddling is in fact managing a threat. It was managing a threat that it couldn't yet openly name or confront head to head. There's a difference between strategic ambiguity, which was the attitude of the UAE, and genuine neutrality. Abu Dhabi has known on which side it is on for a very long time, and all our friends know that. Having said that, what this war has done, it destroyed the diplomatic cover that was mistakenly seen or read as hedging or as fencing or whatever it is. There was an assumption in UAE that trying to avoid an open-ended war or head-to-head confrontation with Iran by some sort of accommodation will secure the huge investment in this country. I've heard that personally from the president saying that in terms of firepower, I can out
This is the
firepower.
president of the UAE.
Yes.
Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, that we sometimes call MBZ.
So I can easily out firepower Iran, but that head-to-head fight will destroy this generational investment in the UAE. So what has been destroyed in this war is the assumption that accommodation works with Iran or accommodation would buy you security. This assumption was destroyed once and for all. Now, when generations will come to read the events, to comment on the events, whether they are students, whether they are diplomats, whether they are military academies, any conversation around this war will happen in light of one fact, that when Iran wanted to attack the GCC, it disproportionately attacked UAE. This is a fact that is imprinted in the DNA of how we see Iran as a threat going forward. So I think this is a generational, civilizational sort of change that cannot be unlearned in any way between, let's say, two electoral cycles or some sort of a deal here or there.
All right, so let me now ask Amir, given your experience, someone who's been living in Abu Dhabi as the Israeli ambassador in the past, how do you see the UAE-Israeli relationship changing in the context of this war?
I've learned while on the 3 years that I lived in Abu Dhabi, between my Emirati friends and leadership of the UAE, I learned that in order to understand what the Emiratis want, you just need to listen to them. And if you will listen to them, they will tell you what they want. I can quote two high-level people, diplomats, His Excellency Dr. Anwar Gargash, who said that he is expecting that Israel and the UAE will become much closer after the war, and that Iran and the UAE or the GCC countries will not be as united or will not be so friendly to each other in the future. Another one that I will quote, if I may, is Her Excellency Rima al-Hashimi, who said that the UAE will be much closer to their friends, and she referred to Israel. And in order to understand how the Emiratis see that, you just need, as I said, to listen to them. And about Israel, Israel knows how to be a friend to our friends. And I think that the UAE proven since October 7th and even before that they are a friendly country to Israel, that they are committed to the Abraham Accords. They said it loud and clear. The UAE was the only country that did not stop any flights to Israel, the only country in the world. Our best friends stopped flying to Israel, but the UAE continued flying to Israel. And we are still feeling that the UAE is a friendly country to Israel.
We're going to get back to Gargash in a minute, and Rima Hashemi is a very prominent Emirati, as you mentioned. Nadim, I want to ask you, you wrote what I think was a landmark op-ed in the Jerusalem Post right after the start of the war about the UAE, and this is what you wrote. You said, this small Arab Gulf country represents the most operationally successful refutation of political Islam's central claim. Abu Dhabi didn't just reject that narrative. It built a civilization-scale counterexample. Through the Abraham Accords, the UAE chose normalization with Israel, positioning itself as an Arab state that moved towards integration and not personal grievance. So I guess I would ask you the same question, which is how pivotal is this war in terms of the Emirati-Israeli relationship? And can you see a way that would strengthen and expand, not just preserve the logic of the Abraham Accords, that would maybe even attract other Gulf states?
David, the quote you cited captures something I dearly believe in, and deeply so. The UAE didn't just sign a deal. That's very important to understand. It made, in the region, in the Middle East, a civilizational argument. And that's why we are being hit hard more than anyone else. The argument was that the Arab dignity does not require perpetual grievance, that modernity and Arab identity are compatible. They are not mutually exclusive, that the path forward runs through the Emirati model, which is integration, not confrontation. That argument won the war of ideas in the region, I believe, or I think it's our responsibility to make that materialize as an outcome of this war. But winning an argument doesn't mean winning a relationship. And this is where I want to be blunt with the Israeli audience. The Abraham Accords logic works as long as Israel is seen as constructive force in the regional order, not just as a security partner. That's very important. As an economic partner, technology partner, a civilizational partner in the deepest sense of these words. This is something we have not reached yet on so many levels, even with the UAE, and I think Amir can attest to that. What Israel and us cannot afford is to be perceived as cherry picking or using peace as a cover for something else, or evading the peace with the Palestinians by having peace with Arab states. We cannot afford that. This should be a transformative moment in the features and the outlook of the Middle East, not only transactional agreement or treaty between UAE and Israel. There are many things that the Israelis can do to help elevate the essence of what the Abrahamic Accords mean. First, us and them, we have to accelerate the economic integration, not just trade deals, but joint ventures, shared technology, infrastructure, AI collaboration, all the activities that creates genuine interdependence. That's what carries weight for the future and future-proofs the Abrahamic Accords, the interdependence, and the most durable security architecture ever invented. Second, the Palestinian track. It should be taken seriously as a Gulf strategic requirement, not because the Gulf has abandoned realpolitik or because we want to utilize this banner in any political way, the way it has been weaponized in the past decades, but because the internal political legitimacy of peace depends in so many ways upon being able to point to a meaningful progress on the Palestinian issue and on the Saudi side more than anyone else. Third, the Israelis need to be more proactive narrators of what the Abrahamic Accords mean or represent. The intellectual case for normalization is currently being left to just a handful of columnists or diplomats, and Amir is one of these champions. But we need to resource the narrative fight for the Arab public and the Israeli public with the same seriousness that we resource it, the defense discussions or relationship.
And Amir, I know you've devoted so much of your time in Abu Dhabi to improving the economic relationships. What do you think is now in the realm of the possible once this war is over, as you see it?
I will start by saying that, in Israel, we have arguments about almost every subject, but the relations with the UAE. I think that here we have coalition of, let's say, 115 out of 120 members of the Israeli parliament. So you should know that. And this is very important. Secondly, the Abraham Accords prove, and the relations with the UAE prove that we can do a lot and we can do much more. With trade, we reached on 2024 $3.248 billion of trade, only goods, without G2G and without software and services. It means that the UAE became
Without military sales. When you say G to G, just so people
government
understand.
to government. It means that the UAE is number 13 out of 126 trading partners that Israel have. And we just started. Now for the future, I believe that Israel should look at the partnership with the GCC countries as strategic partnership. I think that we should share our experience in many areas and subjects, like, for example, home defense, but not only defense. And now when we are talking about the countries that signed the Abraham Accords, Bahrain and the UAE here in our region, and Morocco, we need to add Egypt and Jordan to this collaboration. Those are very important countries. I'm sure Nadim will agree with me, inshallah, Lebanon as well. And if we will think regionally, and we can add value to the countries in the region, not only Israel can add value, every country can add value to the others. This region can be heaven. And this is what we need to do.
So now I want to bring you both to something that Dr. Anwar Gargash, the top diplomatic advisor to the president of the UAE, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, and he said this to the Council of Foreign Relations. He says, Iran's full throttle attack on the Gulf states will actually strengthen the Israeli role in the Gulf, will not diminish it. You both know Gargash well personally, and the leadership of his boss, Sheikh Mohammed. How do you understand their thinking, and which Gulf states do you think will take Dr. Anwar up on his offer for closer ties with Israel after this war ends? Nadim, we'll start with you.
Let me say something about how I understand Anwar Gargash's role before unpacking the statement itself. Dr. Anwar is not a pundit. He doesn't freelance. So when he makes a statement of this magnitude at the Council of Foreign Relations, it carries MBZ's explicit authorization. I have zero doubt about that. And this is not like an official position presented with plausible deniability. It is a declaration of a strategy, of a conclusion of probably the most vicious war we've witnessed since the inception of UAE as a state. The statement is extraordinary not because it's surprising to people who know Emirati thinking, and I'm sure Amir knows what I'm talking about, but because of how explicitly it inverts the conventional wisdom in the region. The conventional wisdom was always that Iranian aggression would automatically create Arab public pressure against Israeli involvement or any relationship between Gulf and any other Arab state and Israel, because the Arab population would view any Israeli-Arab partnership as humiliating, embarrassing, whatever it is. You know this narrative, David. You've watched this enough to know what I'm talking about. Gargash is saying the opposite. And he's saying that the opposite actually happened. And here's why I think President Mohammed bin Zayed arrived at this conclusion. MBZ has spent his political life watching the resistance narrative being weaponized against his country, against the dream, the UAE dream that he was and is still pursuing. It was weaponized. The Arab public sentiment was weaponized against exactly the kind of state he is building. Prosperity-oriented, security-conscious, and governance-led in so many ways. So every time Iran attacked someone in the Arab street, the conventional wisdom was that the Arab street was supposed to rally to resistance. This time, when Iran attacked the UAE and the other Gulf states directly, the GCC street in the Gulf did not rally to resistance, not at all, not even in Qatar. It rallied to survival. And survival required exactly the kind of robust diplomatic, technical, political, security-driven relation and architecture with countries like Israel and the U.S. and the European Union. The Emirati public opinion is too sophisticated to frame this as just we love Israel, like an emotional reaction. And what MBZ is saying is much more precise. He's saying that Iran's strategic miscalculation by attacking states, and what Anwar said basically in the statement, that by attacking states that had an alternative security architecture, just because they have this alternative security architecture, has made that architecture legitimate and more robust. So they basically achieved the opposite of what they intended to achieve. That's, in my opinion, the main outcome of this. So the Israeli role went from useful but embarrassing to necessary and visionary and robust and integral to the whole architecture in the UAE, alongside the US and the European Union, obviously, and this will bleed into other states, I believe.
So can you just be a little more explicit on what other states, what other Gulf states do you think will move closer? Many of them have been hit by Iran, even people that have served as mediators for the Iranians.
David, at the end of the day, all of them. At the end of the day, all of them.
I agree with Amir that eventually all of them, but the living example in this experiment is Qatar. Like, we've seen Qatar moving and reacting in a completely different way than what someone would expect. Even Al Jazeera has been subject to intense debates around how going forward the content should be or would be. The editorial strategy of Qatar in that sense. Qatar is the most obvious, and I believe that this war opened more venues for the Saudi-Israeli normalization.
Amir, what do you think?
Now, both of us are talking to the Emirati leadership. I'm sure that Nadim is talking much, much more than me. And those who understand the UAE can tell you that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed did not wake up in the morning and decided to sign the Abraham Accords. You know, I had a lecturer at the university that used to write on his exams, please read the question 10 times and answer once, and not the other way around. And the leadership of the UAE are reading any question 10 times and answering once, and this is the right answer. I can tell you that the leadership there is very smart and they are very responsible leaders. And that's referred to why they are not attacking Iran when everyone is sitting on the bench and shouting to them, shoot, shoot, shoot. No, they will think about the medium and long term, and they will read the question 10 times and will answer once. And this is why when I'm talking to my friends in the UAE, they are all supporting the leadership. And when I'm hearing what Dr. Anwar Gargash said, and I'm hearing the analysis of Nadim, of course, I can tell you that it makes sense. And this is what will happen. And when you ask Nadim who will be the next country, I don't know who will be the next country, but I can tell you that all of them will be united at the end of the day, and all of them will sign agreements with Israel. Why? Because they can look at the showcase of the Israel-UAE relations, and this showcase will bring them into the question, why not us?
You also know Sheikh Mohammed, and you know Anwar Gargash, and so just any more insight into them. Some people say, look, among all the Gulf states, they are the most clear-eyed about the threats of extremism, and it's about also the role of science in bringing the society forward. And Israel is very proud of that on the science side. Just as it's skeptical
No, it's not
on
only
the
science,
MB.
David. In 2015, Sheikh Mohammed gave a lecture and said, I'm dreaming about the day that we will send the last barrel of oil out of Abu Dhabi. And he said, and we will celebrate that day if we all work hard. He's talking against his cash cow when he's talking about celebrating the day that they will send the last barrel of oil out of Abu Dhabi. He's not talking about that he don't want to deal with gas and oil. He's talking about many other subjects, and it can be, again, renewable energy and water treatment and AI, everything that's related to know-how that can put the UAE in a position when they will be a center for innovation. And they are doing it step by step.
There's no doubt that this is a person who has a lot of vision and the courage to see through his vision.
And he's not alone. He have his brother, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah, Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. He have the Prime Minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid.
Yeah.
He have group of people, very strong and smart people.
And see the role also of strong ties with Israel in the post-oil world to diversify and digitize their economy beyond the oil economy, you're saying?
Above. And I'm talking to friends in the UAE. Or friends here in Israel are saying, yes, but they are not democracies. I'm saying to them, listen, do you think that they are controlling their people by power? No. They are controlling their people by measuring their happiness, by making their citizens happy about their leaders. And sometimes I'm jealous.
So let me go to Nadim here and ask about the issue of, in the Middle East, sometimes these conspiracy theories have a life of their own. The mu'amara, as they say in Arabic, and the mu'amara that we saw before the war is that the Saudi-Emirati tension continue. And people say, no, it's the Emiratis have chosen sides with Israel against the other Arabs. I'm just curious about this tension and how does this tension play out in the Arab-Israeli arena if Saudi-Emirati tensions continue beyond the war? Nadim?
I think the tensions will continue after the war. I read so many analyses that the Iran war, if achieved one thing, it achieved reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and the UAE that was premised on the phone calls between the leaders of the two countries. That is,
so the Iranians deserve a Nobel Prize for bringing the Saudis and Emiratis together?
it's
a joke.
It's not a dispute of that scale that requires a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
So what it is, it's a foundational dispute emerging from competition, from defining a post-oil Middle East and the post-Iran Middle East. These are not easy or light disagreements to be overcome by just the noise of the war that's taking place. So what I'm saying is that these tensions are there to stay for a while, and they need more than the Iranian war to cover them. They need more redefining the foundations of the relationship. I think this is a serious dispute between the two countries that shouldn't be taken lightly, but it's not something that they cannot manage or overcome. My belief is that, at least I know both sides. I worked for the Saudis for 10 years. I'm an Emirati citizen. I know my leadership. I know my country very well. And I think, without any false hopes, I think there is a huge room of maturity and creativity on both sides to at least manage the dispute and manage this rift that is driven by very concrete reasons, not only personal dynamics between the two leaders, as most of the Western reporting on that dispute like to portray.
So why, Nadim, has Israel been brought in on these mu'amaras with these conspiracy theories, as if the Emiratis and the Israelis are choosing one side? It just seems that, like, the Saudi-Emirati dispute is about a lot of things, but it's not about Israel. It's about, is it about personalities?
Partly,
different
let's
regions?
be honest. Let's be honest, David, about this. Israel is part of the dispute. Let's not hide behind our fingers in two aspects. A, MBS, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, was ready to move forward, but he discovered his society, his people, more than he expected, have a problem with the Palestinian component of the normalization process with the Israelis. And that was compounded by the war in Gaza. So if you are a Saudi leader, the advancement in the relationship between Abu Dhabi and Tel Aviv, it's concerning for you, concerning in terms of how much pressure it puts on you and it puts on your plans. That's normal. He is thinking about his country's best interest, and UAE is thinking about its best interest. So this is number one. Number two, in the economic competition and race between Abu Dhabi and between UAE and Saudi Arabia and the whole region in terms of AI, economic diversification, post-oil schemes and arrangements, the Saudis see Israel as an accelerant factor that is to the advantage of Abu Dhabi and disadvantage of themselves. So that's as well is problematic for them.
What do you mean exactly?
It's not a secret that the post-oil Middle East is premised on AI and technology. And in that sense, the Israelis are way more advanced than any other nation. The Abrahamic Accord injected so much know-how and knowledge and technical foundations into the UAE diversification programs in that arena, something that will not be available for the Saudis before any Saudi-Israeli peace. The Israeli component is an accelerant in that sense to whatever UAE is trying to do. And it's creating anxiety on the Saudi side, and that's a natural outcome. So yeah, the Israeli component is not a mu'amara, it's not a conspiracy. And there's a third component, which is the geostrategic component. The big countries, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, all of these big countries, legacy big players, they are anxious about what kind of Middle East is emerging from this war. The last thing they want to see is a Pax Israeli Middle East where there is intelligence, military supremacy on the Israeli side. And probably some of them think that the UAE is normalizing this supremacy. I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm saying that's part of the calculus of any one of the leaders of these big countries in the region.
Okay, Amir, I want to know if you agree with this assessment about the Saudi-Israeli differences and that Israel is very much a part of it.
First of all, Israel should protect its own citizens. And we saw it especially after October 7th. So any changes, anything that we will do in the future will be strongly connected to the security of our citizens. So when people are talking about two-state solution, it might be the right solution, but now we need to talk about separation and to find ways to bring hope to the region. Now, the Saudis are very welcome to cooperate with Israel. But I think that Israel should never, and not only Israel, the United States and other countries should never forget who was first and who came first and who did it. No one was telling the Saudis, don't come and don't sign with us any agreement. We would like to sign it only with the UAE. And the Emiratis are cooperating with Israel because it's good for both countries. As I said before, Leave security aside, leave other things aside, and we should go deeper. I will just end here and by saying that we will welcome each and every country that will show us that they are our friends. And again, Israel is a small country with 10 million citizens that we need to fight to prove our place here each and every day. And I think that the cooperation with the GCC countries as a legitimate partner can bring us into a much better place and can bring the GCC countries into a much better place. And this is why we are doing it.
Nadim, you wanted to get in on this?
I just want to be a devil's advocate for 2 sentences. When it comes to Saudi Arabia, size matters. Saudi Arabia is a large population. There is the resistance narrative has been weaponized against Saudi Arabia and its political class and positioning and outlook for decades. They have an Islamist problem. I don't think that Prince Mohammed can treat this social and political reality in his society in any light way. It cannot be the case. UAE is much more agile because we are a smaller country and we have done a lot of the homework earlier than anyone else by virtue of moral and strategic clarity on the leadership, more consistency on the governance level rather than the changes that happened in Saudi Arabia from the mid-90s all the way up. So there are foundational questions why Saudi Arabia might be hesitant, but this in no case should be a reason for not going forward. I'm sure that the Saudi leadership understands very well their interest in pursuing peace with the Israelis. For the first time, the peace now is coming from the needs of the region itself. Direct needs and requirements and prerequisites of the economic diversification agenda. You cannot have Red Sea connectivity and tourism without stability, and you cannot have stability without peace. This is very well understood on the Saudi side. But again,
In other words, the Red Sea and the tourism, these are all part of the vision of Mohammed bin Salman of MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. So you're saying he can't get the economic prosperity he wants without peace. This is a Saudi interest, right?
that's a Saudi interest. That is
No,
very-
he can
and-
get prosperity, but it will be limited.
But that brings me to one. There is a responsibility on the Israeli side as well. I totally understand what Amir said about the post-October 7 psyche and reality. And that was one of the most barbaric attacks on a Jewish community, probably since the Holocaust. So one should be empathetic enough to understand how this event might have redefined the Jewish psyche when it comes to their existence in the region. Having said that, there is responsibility on the Israeli side to move beyond the security outlook when it comes to the Palestinian question. We have interest, they have interest in moving forward as much as possible. I'm not saying two-state solution might not be it's like off the table for a long time.
But Nadim, this is what I said, we need to create hope.
Yes, separation could be, divorce could, I don't know.
And
what's
what kind
the,
of
but we
separation?
need,
Let's talk. Let's sit and talk.
exactly. We need a political solution to a political problem. We cannot afford a security solution for a political problem.
But I think that the involvement of the Gulf countries in creating this atmosphere, in creating and preparing the land for better relations between Israel and the Palestinians is crucial. It's crucial. We
Yeah,
really believe
absolutely.
that we should do it together. And again, there is the right time for everything. If we will jump now,
I have a phrase I like to use, saying that between Israel and the Gulf, when it comes to the Palestinian issue, it could be a bridge. It doesn't have to be a bypass road.
absolutely.
It could be a bridge.
The Palestinians are not going anywhere, and the Israelis are not going anywhere. We will live next to each other, and we will need to find a
Yeah.
solution. And
To-
the wisdom is not in the Israeli side or in the Palestinian side.
There's just too much history and too little geography. But nobody's going anywhere.
Yeah.
And geography is a very stubborn thing. Last question is the United States. And I wonder if you feel that this war is going to be a turning point in terms of the region that the Gulf states will not just draw closer to Israel, as Dr. Anwar said, but will also double down in terms of relations with Washington as well. And maybe, Amir, you start, and then Nadim, you have the last word.
I'm sure that the United States is the central and most important partner for this region. I'm not saying that the countries from the region will not have relations with China and Russia. They will continue as they did before, and they are smartly did that. But on a civilian cooperation. And the main cooperation will still be with the United States, and it will go deeper and deeper, but it depends also how much Washington would like to be involved and to be partner with what's going on in this region. If you will ask me, this region will be heaven. And the countries that will be involved in what's going on in this region will be very happy. And those who will drink espresso while the train is leaving the station will be very sorry for that. I'm referring to the Europeans.
That's clear.
Okay. Yeah. Nadim, how do you see it in terms of the role of Gulf relations with the United States? And if you want to also respond to what Amir said about Europe too, Alam Wasala.
Let me reframe the terms a little bit, because doubling down or hedging present false binary for the Gulf states, and particularly for the UAE. The UAE's model has never been about choosing between, how do I call it, patrons. They're not choosing between patrons. It's about making itself indispensable to everyone in terms of trade, economy, security, AI, you name it. So the Emiratis are in BRICS. They are deepening their relationship with Israel. They are the largest Arab economy for U.S. investments. At the same time, they maintain excellent relationship with China and India. This is not choosing between patrons, and this is not incoherence, definitely. It's the flow sovereignty doctrine applied to geopolitics, that you are indispensable to everyone at the same time. That said, I think this war has produced a specific, what I call American credibility premium in the Gulf, that everyone understands and sees. And I'm not talking about UAE only, about the whole region. And we mentioned Qatar earlier in the discussion. So the Trump administration moved. It was decisive. It delivered results that more cautious, institution-bound approaches of previous administrations did not. These are geopolitical facts in the Middle East. And Gulf leaders, and I think MBZ in particular, they respect power that is actually exercised. But they respect it more when it's exercised within a strategic framework. And here is where the anxiety kicks in about what is the day after and the outcome of this war. I just want to finish with one note. There was hedging in the region, and to the extent it existed as a deliberate strategy, it has become visibly that the cost of this hedging is very high. And I think this is the lesson that many in the region, many in the GCC in particular, are drawing.
Not to hedge and to keep relations strong within your camp.
Ambiguity wasn't a deterrent. That's a huge lesson in the region.
So we need more clarity in terms of
strategic and moral clarity.
Strategic and moral clarity of where you stand in the region. I think that's very helpful, and I want to really thank both of you, Nadim, Amir, for joining us on this episode of Decision Points. Thank you both.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you,
Amir.
Thank you, Nadim. Thank you, David.
Thank you again for tuning in to this episode of Decision Points. Please be sure to rate and review us where you listen. It helps us to build our community. And also subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss upcoming episodes. There's a lot to unpack. Until next time, I'm David McGuffin.